Okay, Scotland, let's go from what was a genuine rivalry to something that manufactured kind of undersells it.
Yes.
Battle of the Sexes and the incredibly talented person versus the ridiculous misogynist showman.
Yes, so the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, like blatant sexism. But thankfully, here in Space Year 2018, all such issues of equality have been definitively settled, and we can all enjoy our utopian lives in this certainly not blasted hellscape of moral torpor at all, oh no. Although a distant memory for us in what's now a permanent golden age, am I leaning too heavily on this trick? I think I might be. Inequality was very much a thing back in 1973, where women's number one tennis player Billie Jean King, played here by Emma Stone, protests over the vast gulf in prize money between the men's and women's tour by breaking away from the establishment to form a new women's tour with several other athletes. The establishment, represented here mainly by Bill Pullman's overtly dismissive Jack Kramer, doesn't take this lying down, throwing them out of the Lawn Tennis Association, thereby knocking them out of contention for the Davis Cup and other tournaments, which is presented as an act of spite here rather than what I would have thought would be an entirely obvious consequence of their decision, which I suppose makes King an oblivious Brexiteer railing against the EU. Also, slightly concerned by the unequal play between seniors... You weren't expecting that metaphor?
I was completely blindsided by the Brexit metaphor.
It's concerning a lot of my brain cycles lately. It's a big thing.
Brexit means match point.
Yes. Yes, also slightly concerned by the unequal pay between the seniors and men's tour prize pot is former number one Bobby Riggs, played here by Steve Carell, although really he's more focused on a great opportunity for a spot of hustling. Latching on to King's demands for equality, he goes full throttle comedy chauvinist pig, declaring men the superior sex and issuing challenges to King to meet him on the court of battle to settle this question, in front of a large paying audience, of course. Now, I recall the trailer for Battle of the Sexes presenting this more as a sort of roustabout comedy than anything, with Riggs's sideshow circus antics being prominently featured, and I suppose it does for the play a prominent part of the final act, but this film is much more about Billie Jean King's assorted internal battles than it is about any poxy game of tennis. A closeted King's relationship with her hairdresser lover, her perceived need to keep this secret given the attitudes of the time and how this impacts her husband, takes up a good portion of the running time, along with how that affects her mental preparations going into the match with Riggs that she's taking much more serious than he does, seemingly. As for Riggs, whether it's overconfidence or that he's simply more focused on pulling sponsorship, ticket sales and cash in general, it's only at the end that he seems to realise what this match means and that perhaps he's been playing with fire of a higher temperature than he intended. It's perhaps a missed opportunity here. Riggs' habitual gambling and hustling is mentioned, but almost as offhandedly as the pro wrestling style sexist promos that he's giving to promote the match. This film presents Riggs' shtick as harmless banter with a wink to the camera, and he's not that bad a guy at all, which may well be the case for all I know, but is still prodding a hot button issues for commercial gain, which isn't exactly the most defensible position. This is mainly glossed over in the presentation here, and well, I suppose it didn't make much of an impact, as I still rather enjoyed this film. But, as I say, perhaps an opportunity missed to get a little more into Riggs' mindset. However, much like the earlier film, this is much more focused on Billie Jean King, rather than their opponent, and to be fair, King has the more interesting, wider story anyway, and so it's probably not a critical flaw. It does a somewhat better job of characterising King, but it's still not the most in-depth look at her character. Thankfully, Emma Stone makes the most of what she's given, and makes her hugely empathetic and courageous presence on screen. Similarly, Carell shows enough charisma to get away with the shtick being more cheeky than arse-cheek. It's no in-depth character piece for sure, and when you compare it against Borg McEnroe, it feels somewhat slight, but I do get the impression that if this film had moved the dial just a little bit from entertaining to analytical, this could have been quite a special film, rather than just a really fun film that I'm sure I'll not remember all that much from this time next year. Of course, that very enjoyability dial setting does mean that it's quite easy to recommend that you all watch it. It's quite a lot of fun. It's not particularly deep or meaningful, but I think it does give quite a good insight into King's various struggles in the society at the time, without ever really going into it too deep. It's a little bit surface treatment only, but it's a really nice looking surface, so yeah, it's well worth watching.
Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Now, my memory is that I actually enjoyed it more than Borg McEnroe, but I saw this about 6 months ago and didn't have time to watch it again before this podcast, so right. I'm working off of my...
It's certainly a film that's built more to be enjoyed than Borg McEnroe. Borg McEnroe is a little bit arm's length or a lot of things. It's a
That's
little bit
reasonable,
cold,
yeah.
and certainly in comparison to this, which is a bit goofier and a bit more comedic in its output.
While working off of 6-month-old memory, my memory generally is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm not so worried about that. What I remember thinking at the time was that yes, Emma Stone is great as Billie Jean King, and she paints her as a really thoughtful, interesting character with a lot of depth. I would have liked a bit more of that depth in the writing, but she does well with what she's given. And having seen a few interviews with Billie Jean King, in particular where she talks about still feeling guilt about cheating on her husband, and I kind of, from the interviews I've seen with Billie Jean King where she talks about, I believe her actually, and I do have some sympathy, because I can't really imagine what that must feel like to be, I don't know if trapped is the right word, I'm not really sure what the correct language would be, because I really, for this, I have no frame of reference at all, but to be gay and be married to a man, but and the film suggests that she's never really been aware that she was gay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, those kind of awakening feelings and experience. But while a character that cheats on someone would normally make me instantly hate them, I think there is enough nuance there, there's enough interest, and there's enough like genuine guilt and genuine empathy for the character that I didn't feel that. And because I've seen Billie Jean King talk about that, I think that's something that's in the writing and in the performance. And that makes that really rather an interesting thing to look at, rather than just someone that's like, okay, you've done a horrible thing to someone who loved you, I hate you, which is typically how I feel about those things and always have. But it's it almost feels like a film of two parts sometimes, though, because you have Billie Jean King so sort of coming to understand herself better, and at the same time developing to this incredibly strong figure in the world of women's tennis, and trying to promote that and get better deals for the players and things. And then at the same time, you have this absolute jackass played by Steve Carell, who's just in it because he's a gambling addict and wants to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
And so the two seem disjointed, and one thing I thought the film was missing was it never really addressed the fact that, well, obviously there should be no doubt at all about Billie Jean King beating this guy. I know they showed that Margaret Court lost him. I'm guessing they were suggesting that was nerves, but I don't know. I don't know enough about Margaret Court to know whether that character was treated fairly or not, but she's treated as an absolute harridan in it, who you want to lose because she's really, really homophobic and deeply unpleasant towards Billie Jean King.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about that person or whether that's actually accurate or not. She feels really, really shallow as a character. But yeah, so they show that she loses, and I'm guessing she did in real life, and people would probably notice if they completely changed that or something. You can invent what's happening behind the scenes that people don't know about. The actual results of matches, not so much.
Yeah.
But what they never really addressed, though, is that there should have never been any doubt about Billie Jean King, a phenomenal tennis player at the peak of her physical prowess, beating a 50-year-old man.
Yeah.
Well, there's not going to be any doubt. Of course she's going to win. Had it been a man of her same age, chances are she wouldn't win. Because while there's a lot of emphasis in tennis on technique, there is still a big physical difference. Men are bigger, men are faster, men are stronger. That's simply biology. It's why men and women don't play against each other, apart from in mixed doubles, because it wouldn't be a fair match. Serena Williams, phenomenal tennis player, and maybe on one given match she might win. Over the course of a season, she's going to lose to men because you can't compete. So had it been a fair fight in terms of that, like a fair match, Billie Jean King was always going to lose. But at the same time, I had a point somewhere 5 minutes ago. I'm not sure what I was wanting to say now. Yeah, I think more just saying that the film didn't really sell particularly well. That ought not to have been any sort of contest at all. A professional player in her 20s is going to destroy any 50-year-old man regardless of who they are, because it's like there's just no physical way that's going to happen if she's like that good a player and he's an old man, even if he had been good. I don't think Bobby Briggs was ever, Bjorn Borg good or anything like that.
No, he was world number one, though, wasn't he? Or was that just American number one?
I don't know. I don't actually know enough about that character, and I meant to check and I forgot, so it's very remiss of me. So maybe I'm talking out my bum here. I don't know. Maybe it's not a name I was ever really familiar with, but I know lots of other players from that era. So I was kind of basing that on, like, if I've not heard of him, he can't have been good. Maybe it's yeah, I'm just displaying a terrible ignorance, and it's a
Yeah.
hole in my knowledge. I must check that out.
Yeah, so he was number one for 3 years, but
Oh, okay. So
that
yes, he's
was
pretty good then. So okay,
it was at a strange time because it was first in 1939 then as a professional in 46 and 47, and there was a lot of
that's
it was a busy old world at the time then.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a bit different. When was it? The 1970s the Open era began. It was a bit before that, but yeah, tennis was a bit weird for a while.
Mhm.
It's now it's like it's a sport in the way you'd understand a sport now, and it